Hello and welcome back to one of my videos. It's been a while since I posted my last video, but like a lot of you, there hasn't been a lot of work about due to this COVID-19 business. But as it goes, this will probably be one of the last videos from this garage, as I've actually sold the house due to financial restraints and whatever. We've sold this and we're moving up country from Kent to Lincolnshire, but more to that in a later video. Today's car of choice is a 2009 Ford Fiesta, and it's coming with a engine light on and the exclamation light on. And when I've scanned it, it's got the P0299, I believe it was P0299. Yes, the turbo underboost code. Now this code is a very common code on Fords. It can be caused by several different things. A lot of people will go straight for the turbo and throw a turbo on it, but it's often not the cause of the problem. So let's have a look. So I'll go through a few things and give you a few possibilities of what it could be. But let's just have a look at the sheet as it came out off the scan tool and look at some freeze frame data. Right, so this is the report it printed out. There's a couple of other random codes there which don't really mean anything, but the one we're interested in is this let's zoom in a bit for you there. The P0299 turbo or supercharger underboost. When we look at the freeze frame data, we can see we had a calculated load of 98%. Engine coolant was 82 degrees. So it's near enough up to top operating temperature. Intake manifold absolute pressure was 147 kilopascals, so that is like underboost. Engine RPM was 2,300. Vehicle speed center was doing 98 kilometers an hour. Air intake 18 degrees. Airflow was 42 grams per second. Fuel rail pressure was 2,540 kilopascals. EGR wasn't commanded, barometric pressure was 99 and throttle position was 30%. So it was accelerating nicely. This is the one that's probably a bit low. It doesn't give the demanded intake manifold pressure, just the actual pressure. So although it's showing 147, I would think it was probably demanding a bit more, which caused that code. Now look at the engine itself. There's a few possibilities for this code. First of all, right, so the main causes for this P0299 underboost code are the following. It could either be a faulty turbo itself, or split, or an air leak in the induction pipes going through from the turbo through the intercooler, which is down there, up through the air intake where the throttle body is, into the intake that way. You could possibly have a blocked air filter causing an air restriction. You could have a blocked fuel filter giving you low fuel pressure and then low boost, or you can have a leaking EGR valve at the back there, which would let too much exhaust gases bypass and cause low boost, or you can have a misreading map sensor causing a low boost fault. So what we do, we go through one of them at a time and see what we can find. Right, so the air filter I took out. The air filter is not too bad at all, and there's no blockages between the air filter and the air intake pipe, which is here. That goes down around the bottom of the box. That's all clear. I had all this box off, this pipe off. Check the splines on the internal part of the turbo. There's no wear in the spindle. It's not leaking any excess oil. I'm assuming the wastegate works okay. That could be an issue. It could be not closing properly, allowing boost not to build up properly, but for the moment we'll assume that's okay. This was slightly loose. Someone had put the bolt in the wrong way around. Someone had put the bolt in the top, so I corrected that. It's got a good seal in there. I've visually checked all these pipes, the induction pipe, the intercooler, the pipes up around there into the inlet. You can't find nothing wrong with them. If there was a leak, you normally get like a little oily residue. Oh, excuse me. But it's all clean and dry, and I've revved it, and the pipes expand, so there's boost. Don't seem to be losing any through there. So the next two components to check really are the turbo pressure control valve, which is down the back of the engine, and the EGR valve. So I think to check that, first of all, we get some live data on the scan tool, and then we'll go from there. Well, a quick change of scenery. We're now in the living room with a whiskey and coke. But what I wanted to say is, when I went in to do live data, or when I went to edit the live data, I deleted it all. I must have deleted the footage by mistake somewhere along the line. But what I was going to show you was, I was comparing EGR values and MAP values, manifold absolute pressure values, demanded against actual. When we measured EGR demanded and actual, there was a little bit of a discrepancy, up to sort of 15, 20, 25% discrepancy when the demanded was opening and shutting and the actual was following, but you know, there was a bit of a discrepancy between the two. The same was with the MAP sensor. The demanded MAP pressure was always a lot higher than the actual MAP pressure. So what I was thinking is there was possibly an EGR leak, lowering the MAP pressures, causing the underboost code, the P0299. So the fault is either going to be a leaky EGR valve, letting exhaust gases bypass and lower the MAP pressure, or it's going to be a faulty turbo pressure valve or solenoid valve, whatever you want to call it, having what you call like an air leak and venting into the airbox unnecessarily. So what we do is, off camera, I'm going to take the EGR valve apart, take the top off, make sure the mechanism inside is free and clean, and then we're going to go and test the turbo solenoid valve or pressure valve, depending on what you want to call it. So we'll see you there. Right, so because we thought the EGR valve had a discrepancy and might be stuck open, off camera I took the EGR apart. To access that, you need to take out this fuel filter, and then the bracket has 3 8mm bolts on it, one here, and one down below. So you move the fuel filter out of the way. You don't need to disconnect any of the pipes. Take the bracket off, which gives you access to the EGR valve, which is located just behind the filter housing down here. You've got one wiring plug, and you've got two small Allen, female Allen Torx head bolts, and then the top of the EGR valve comes off. When I took it off, it was a bit dusty and dirty in there, a little bit sooty, but everything seemed to be working okay, nice and free. The linkage was okay, so I cleaned that up and put that back together. So although we have a bit of a discrepancy, shall we say, in the readings of the EGR valve, we're going to leave that for the moment, and we're going to concentrate on the pressure control valve for the turbo. Right, so I don't know whether you can see that linkage in there. Let me try and zoom in. But I've got my finger held over the end with vacuum applied. So if I let go of my finger, you can see the arm returns back. So we know that this solenoid is good. This diaphragm in here is good. So that unit's good. So now we need to test the vacuum from the pump, which is here on the back of the camshaft. Vacuum comes out in a T-junction. You've got one pipe that goes round to the brake servo, and this is the pipe that goes down along the back and down the back of the engine to the solenoid, and then the other one I showed you comes back up as the breather pipe up along here to the airbox and goes into the airbox. So these are the two outside ones, so we need to attach a vacuum gauge and see what's going on. Another test we could do, I've got my vacuum gauge hooked up to the solenoid down there, just to see how much pressure it takes to pull that arm in. So if I pump the vacuum gauge, you'll see that's come over to its fullest extent, and we're only at what's that, 8 psi. Well, no, not psi, is it? It's 7 or 8 inches of mercury. So it doesn't take a lot of vacuum to pull that over. If I release the pressure, and if we pump it up again, and zoom in a bit there, so you can see a couple of pumps. See, it's full travel, and it's holding vacuum, nothing's leaking out, and that was 6 inches of mercury, so that's not a great deal at all. So we know for sure that that unit is okay. Now what I've done is I've put a T-piece in place on the vacuum diaphragm down there, so now we can measure the vacuum at the diaphragm, and I've also connected up a vacuum gauge to where the breather goes into the from the airbox, so we can see if there's any air leaking back from the airbox or from the valve to the airbox. So let's go and start the car up and see what happens. Right, so as you can see, the engine running, we have 21 inches of mercury of vacuum at the diaphragm, which is holding the gate closed as it should, but we've also got 29 inches of mercury of vacuum at the vent where it goes into the airbox. So the valve is leaking back through and exhausting when it shouldn't be. Right, so if we unplug the vacuum gauge from the vent, let's see what effect it has on the vacuum. The vacuum stays pretty steady, doesn't drop that much. So you can see when I rev it, with the open pipe, vacuum drops down a little bit. If we plug the pipe up and we do the same test again with the pipe plugged up, it doesn't lose no vacuum at all. Right, it's several days later. We're into the new year. We've got the new part. So let's get this out of the bag. For those that want to know what the part number is, it is, will it focus on there? There we go. It's quite a weighty unit. This one, I think it weighs more than the old one. So we'll put that on and we'll give it another go. Now I couldn't get under the car with the camera and my tools and my hands, because you need about 3 hands, tools, camera in a very confined space. So for taking off this pressure control valve or diverter valve for the turbo as they call it, I've taken a few pictures step by step, showing you taking the pipes off, taking the bolts off, and then taking the unit out, and then we'll carry on from there. This is pretty difficult to film, but it's right under the car, right above the that's the steering rack. If you look up above the steering rack, there's the valve up there. If I'll focus on that, it's just bolted to the back of the engine. And you have your 3 pipes on there. You can't get your hand up there and the camera at the same time. Let's see if I can get my hand round the other way. Hang on, let's take the photographs now. See if we can get a focus on that. Right, if I put my hand up the other way, we've got the 3 pipes. The first pipe coming in, that's your vent pipe, which goes up to the airbox. The second pipe in is the vacuum pipe that goes up to the turbo actuator, and this third pipe here is the vacuum inlet from the vacuum pump on the end of the camshaft. Right, so now because space is very tight under the engine, I can't get the camera, tools and both my hands, or one hand even, under there by the pressure control valve to show you how to take it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some pictures up here in the corner, and to show you step by step how to take it off. It's all pretty simple. It's only 3 pipes and 2 10mm nuts and a wiring connector, and hey presto, it's off. So when you first look at it, you get under the car, you look above the steering rack. On the back of the block, you see this view, and this is the turbo actuator with all 3 pipes and the wiring connector in situ. Now the first thing you have to take off, or the first thing you can take off, is the end pipe, the 3rd pipe, and that is the vacuum pipe from the vacuum pump on the end of the camshaft. To pull that off, you might need a pair of long nose pliers, because sometimes they stick on a little tube. Give a quick wiggle, then they pull off. So you pull the first one off first. The second one is the pipe that goes to the turbo actuator valve, that's on its own. And once you've got that off, then you go to the 3rd one, which is the vent pipe, which goes up to the airbox. So that's where it vents to. It vents to the airbox rather than venting into fresh air for whatever reason. And then once you've got those 3 pipes off, you then got the wiring connector. The wiring connector's just got a little tab on the side. Pull the tab and pull the connector off. It's just a 2-pin connector, nice and easy. And then to get the unit off the engine itself, you've got 2 10mm nuts. The first 10mm nut you can take off with a little 1/4-inch ratchet in the socket. Take that right off. The one above it, you have to push the pipes up, not the pipes, the wires above it, to get to the top nut. Just need to loosen that, and then once you've loosened it, you can hinge the solenoid away and take it out. Of course, reversal with the new one, which I'll show you in a second, is just a reversal of what we just done. Right, with the new valve on, it still looks like we lose pressure when we rev the engine. Right, I've been out and I've given it a road test with the new valve feed, and it seems a lot better than what it was. I think we've still got a couple of issues, maybe. We're still getting sometimes some random communication codes from the ECU, So I think it might have the start of a cluster problem, because they seem to be intermittent and random, and you get communication codes for different things occasionally. But on the turbo side, we're still lacking a little bit of pressure from the demanded map pressure. It's still a little bit low, and the EGR is a little bit erratic. So I think we've still got a couple of problems, but let me show you some of the data that I've got here. Right, so what you can see here is the blue line is the demanded manifold pressure, and the black line is the actual manifold pressure. And as you can see, it's always a little bit low. If we start along the line, you can see the actual manifold pressure is always a little bit lower than the demanded. So I think we've still got a bit of maybe a bit of a leaky EGR valve. Come on. This is the recording from the test drive I've just done. You can see in the blue line, the as you accelerate, it demands more and more map pressure, and the actual map pressure is just a little bit lagging behind. Doesn't quite make it, but it hasn't set any codes. There's no pending codes. Give it a bit of a discrepancy there. So even on places like that where you've got quite high boost, again you've got like it's demanding 206 kilopascals, but it's only boosting to about 185, 187 now. Again there, it's a little bit low. It's actually a little bit high there. But it does tend to follow the line in a general pattern. As I say, I went for a nice. So if you get it on a cruise, turbo pressure is about the same. So I gave it a good run, and as I say, I didn't get any codes back. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to let the car go back to the customer, let them run it around and see whether anything more develops. But I'm thinking that it's probably going to have an EGR valve before long, and maybe some further investigation work into the ECU and or to the cluster. I think the cluster might want to repair. Although it's not bad at the moment, it is throwing up them random codes. So I think that's going to be all for now, guys. If anything else comes to mind, I'll take it on the end.